So, on today's episode, I kind of want to share my heart around where I've personally been the past almost 13 years and this huge life transition that I'm up against. So, I've been a mom of four for almost 13 years. I've had a kiddo at home with me throughout every season of those 13 years. And next Tuesday, all of my kids start full time school. And that for me feels incredibly exciting for a lot of reasons and also incredibly scary for a lot of reasons. And this is kind of what I want to talk about today because I am really in this deep reflective place of trying to understand what is this next season really going to look like for all of us, for my family, for my kids, for me, for my husband, for our marriage. It's pretty wild how our life goes through these different transitions. And one of the things that I actually talked about with my therapist this week that I want to share about with you was this idea of never ending change. We talked a little bit about the idea that I have for my book and the vision that I have for my business, the things that I feel called to do. And here's one of the things that she shared with me that I thought was incredibly profound. And I want to share it with you today. It's this idea and this concept of the one and only thing that we can count on in this life is change. No matter what we do, everything changes in some capacity, right? Whether that's our relationship changes, right? Our kids grow up. We have job changes. We have house changes. There are so many things that perpetually change. Quite honestly, all of it does. And I've had to learn in my own journey as a type A woman, right? As a perfectionist, as someone who really prides myself on having a system and a schedule and kind of this black and white strategy behind how things should go. I've had to learn that that is not at all the case, especially when you step into motherhood, especially when you're an entrepreneur, and especially when you really dig into life beyond just yourself. As she shared, and as I want to reiterate, the one thing that we can count on in this life is change. And so I want to talk a little bit about how do you manage this concept in the life transitions that we all go through, which will never end. How do we manage this concept of change? How do we really embrace it and flow through it rather than fighting it or feel overwhelmed by it to the point where we don't continue forward, where we don't take action, where we don't really step into who we are continuing to strive to be? When I think about changes, there's three key things that I've personally tried to do, and I want to kind of encourage you with this too. Maybe you're someone who's in a similar season like this. Maybe you're up against a major life transition. Maybe you've been doing one thing for a really long time, and that's coming to a close for whatever reason. And so you're now in this place where you're trying to figure out what is next going to look like? How do I really unpack this? How do I make sense of it? So let's just quickly talk about what are three things that we can do when change is upon us and when it feels very emotionally big, right? This is what I talked about in therapy this week. It just feels very emotionally big for me right now. I don't really know exactly how things are going to go. And more importantly, I don't know how they're going to feel. I have no doubt that it's going to be great, that we're all going to get to a place of thriving, and that it's going to be an incredible opportunity for our family to kind of step into this next level of what we're doing with our day-to-day life. But at the same time, there is major grief and mourning for me in this transition. As I shared, I've been a mom for almost 13 years. And that entire time, I have been home with my kids. I've worked in some capacity, and I've had the privilege of having very flexible working opportunities where I've been able to kind of weave it into my day. But at any rate, I've had kids with me, right? For all the Costco trips, for all the doctor's appointments, for all the things that I've really truly had to do inside my day, I've had kids at home with me. And so again, there's this big component to grief, and it feels very emotionally heavy. And change can do that, right? That's the reality of change in our life. So I want to talk a little bit about what are the things that I'm doing and what are the things that maybe you can do if you feel like you're in this season of change, if you are in this transition, if you're up against, again, this really big emotional piece to your life. What can you do? So the first thing I'm doing is pausing and reflecting. And I told my therapist this week, This has been a hard process for me because there have been moments where I have paused, reflect, journaled, written our story out, have gone on walks, like really deep thinking, things like that. And I have had moments where I have felt like, have I done enough? Have I soaked it in enough? What did I miss? What did I rush? What did I not stay in the present for when it comes to this specific season? And that's been another piece to the puzzle that has felt overwhelming for me. But here's the thing. No matter what, we're simply doing our best. And no matter what, all we can do is pause and reflect on the season and the growth opportunity and what we've experienced and what we want to remember, what we want to take away, and how we want to continue to grow as we move forward in our life. So that is really what I'm doing as much as possible inside this season of pausing and reflecting, because again, it has really opened my eyes to trying to take the key takeaways so I can press forward, not only in my journey as a woman, right? And as a person that feels called to serve in the health and wellness space and in the world, but as a mom, right? As a mom, as a wife, what do I want to take into this next season? What do I want to do in this 2.0 season? What is that going to look like? I don't know. I have no idea. I know it's going to feel really uncomfortable. I know that I'm going to be overwhelmed in a lot of it. I know that it's going to feel super unknown because it is. I've never done this before, but I also know that there are key takeaways and things that I can carry over with me from what I've already been doing the past 13 years that I know will help make this next season feel even better. So pausing and reflecting is kind of the first piece of the puzzle. Here's the second thing. And again, I kind of spoke on this in the first point. I really believe that when you're going through change, it's so important to make sure that you're reframing the situation and thinking about it in your mindset to the point of understanding, again, am I framing this in a way that keeps me in a growth headspace, keeps me in a positive headspace, keeps me moving forward? Or am I framing it in a way where I'm feeling negative or feeling sorry for myself or feeling like this is the end and now what, right? It's so important to remember the importance of reframing the situation at hand and thinking about, what can you continue to do to keep yourself in that place of growth, of gratitude, of feeling blessed for what you've already gone through in your life, and how, again, you can carry that over to the next season. As I said, one of the thoughts that's come into my head was this idea of, have I done enough? What did I miss? What did I rush? What did I wish away? And here's the truth. Those thought patterns are inevitable for me personally because I'm human, right? And that's just how my brain works. I'm always kind of thinking in a very dynamic way on the good and the hard and the negative. But at the end of the day, I know that those thoughts are not actually productive. And I know that in order for me to really take away what I want to as I'm stepping into this next season, I have to make sure I'm reframing my mindset and reframing the situation and thinking about, what am I doing to go forward? Right? What is this next season going to look like? And how am I taking what I need in order to be even better, in order to be the best that I'm supposed to be? And so make sure that you're really thinking through that and thinking about that again in seasons of change, because if we're not careful, our mind will play tricks on us and we'll stay stuck in the soundtracks that actually don't serve ourselves and our families and our future. And I want to make sure that I'm calling that to attention, because I think oftentimes, again, we can get caught in these loops, in these soundtracks, and think too much about things that actually aren't productive. So that's number 2. Here's number 3. And I think this is really important. And my therapist and I also talked about this. It's just giving yourself, again, permission to feel what you need to feel. When I talked about this in therapy this week, she made a great point. She shared with me that, Aaron, you're basically saying goodbye almost to a job, right? A job that you've had for 13 years of your life, over a decade of your life. You're saying goodbye to this specific role, this specific job, this specific thing that you've been pouring your heart and soul and time and energy and effort into. You are saying goodbye to that. It's a grieving process. And so in that kind of process, it's so important to feel whatever it is that you need to feel. So this point really ties into the other 2 of reflecting and pausing and then reframing the situation. Feeling what you have to feel plays into those 2 points, because When we really name what we feel and think about how we feel and get self-aware about how we feel, that helps us get into deeper reflection, but it also helps us reframe the thoughts that we're having. And so that's the biggest point I want to make sure that I'm sharing, because I have had to really remind myself of this in this season, that it is okay. And quite honestly, it's really important to name the feelings, to feel the feelings, to actually go through them. This isn't a transition I want to rush. This isn't a change that I want to happen overnight and to be over. I want to allow myself to really feel what I need to feel in this transition. And I will say right now, in this moment, I feel okay. But I've already had moments that I have not felt okay. And I know as the next week comes up and we get into the full transition of the season, there are going to be moments where I'm not okay. Again, I'm moving into this place of saying goodbye in a lot of ways to this little kid season with my family and with my children. That is a big life change and transition that, quite honestly, I'm not sure we talk about enough inside the motherhood community. We don't always voice and name the endless transition that we feel and that we experience, and how inside that there's so much emotion, and there's grief, and there's letting go, and there's saying goodbye. And that's hard. That's not easy. That doesn't mean we live there, but it's absolutely okay to name it and feel it and be real and honest about really, truly how transitions like this affect us as women and as moms. And so again, if you're in a season of change, if you're in a season of transition, if you are also in this place kind of like me where you feel like you're saying goodbye, that you're shedding this layer of what you've been doing and you're moving on into this next phase, whatever that may look like, as always, know you are not alone. As always, know that it's important to normalize how that feels inside and out when it comes to our health. And know that whatever it is that you may need, it's so important to speak up about that and lean into it and really dig into the things that are going to make you feel good during this kind of season of change. And so just to reiterate, what are the 3 things that I'm personally doing that I want to encourage you to really think through or lean into when it comes to change? 1, pausing and reflecting. 2, reframing the situation as needed. And 3, feeling what you need to feel, naming it, being self-aware, and really understanding that whatever it is that you're feeling is okay. It's part of the process. It's part of life. I know I've talked to a lot of moms that have experienced this transition over the past handful of years who are a little bit ahead of me. And I know that there are moms listening to this that will experience this years after me. And here's what I want to share with you. It's hard. Watching our kids grow up is hard. Changing seasons in our lives is hard. Trying to figure out what's next is hard. Change is hard. That doesn't mean we stay stuck, but instead we really figure out ways to talk about it, relate through it, and figure out what we need in order to press into the next season as our best selves. That's something that I'm personally trying to figure out right now, because I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I know the things that I've worked on in my own life, and I know the things I want to continue to work on in my life, but I also know that there's a lot of learning and unlearning and uncomfortable growth I'm going to have to continue to go through as I'm navigating this next season. As I shared at the beginning of this podcast, here's the thing we can always count on in this life: change. And so the more we can navigate change with grace, the more we're able to really hone in on how do we take care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit through changes. Thank you as always for tuning in today. I'll see you in the next one.